By late 2020, the ban on the lockdown, which was brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, had been lifted in Devon. As was natural at the time, the majority of people couldn't wait to get out and resume hanging out with the friends they weren't able to see during the lockdown. And this was the situation in the case of Lorrain Cox. Sadly, on one of Lorrain's trips to spend time with her friends, she had an encounter that prevented her from ever seeing them or anyone else again. What, or rather who, could she have encountered? Keep watching to find out. In today's video, we'll be looking at the case of Lorrain Cox. My name is Zach, and you are watching Crime Origin. The disappearance of Lorrain Cox. Although there is little information about how Lorrain grew up, it is certain that she was born in 1988. In describing Lorrain, her family would often use words such as kind-hearted, loving, and generous. Needless to say, the young woman's family adored her. Based on these premises, one could arguably say that Lorrain had a normal childhood with normal parents. Lorrain was born and raised in Devon, in the UK. There were speculations that she lived most of her life in Devon, which includes high school, college, and all. It might also not be out of place to say that she met her fiancé in Devon as well. During the lockdown in 2020, Lorrain decided to move to Scotland with her fiancé, Elise Fallow. However, months following the move, Lorrain decided to go back to Devon. Like many people at the time, Lorrain felt that it was best to be with her family. By August 14, 2020, Lorrain was already in Devon and had begun to catch up with friends she hadn't seen in a long time. On August 31, 2020, Lorrain and her friends met up at a bar to relieve their lockdown experiences and share a few drinks. At the time, Lorrain was set to leave the bar. It was about 1 to 2 a.m., meaning it was already the early hours of September 1st. In addition to it being an ungodly hour, it appeared that Lorrain had a little too much to drink, so she was a bit drunk. Taking all these into consideration, one would expect that the group would leave together after a night of fun, but they didn't. Lorrain didn't leave with her friends. Instead, she chose to walk home alone. Unknown to her, a man was behind her, intentionally following her. This man followed the nearly middle-aged woman for over a mile until he eventually approached her. Whatever this man told Lorrain, no one really knows. But then, after speaking with her, she began to follow him to his house. He also placed his right hand on her shoulder, making them seem like a couple. There are several comments as to why Lorrain followed a stranger to his house. Some say she was a little tipsy and didn't have control of herself. Some say he had promised her alcohol, while others probably held her at knife point. Regardless, Lorrain went into his apartment, and that was the last she was seen. Days passed, and Lorrain's friends began to grow worried. After the night of drinking with them, they had not heard from her either by call or text. Lorrain's fiancé, in particular, repeatedly called and texted, but got no response. On the other hand, a supposed Lorrain kept posting updates on her Facebook page. Friends and family, however, concluded that the posts were probably not from Lorrain, since they sounded nothing like her. From the Facebook updates, her friends deduced that Lorrain wrote something about how she had to suddenly leave Devon for Plymouth. Her family and friends found it odd because Lorrain had never at any point in her life mentioned Plymouth or anything about the city, so they retained their doubts that someone else had updated those. Another thing that added fire to their doubt was that Lorrain had diabetes, meaning she took medications to manage her diabetes, and there was no way she could have left Devon without those. Plus, they all had the same question running wild in their minds. Why would Lorrain want to leave Devon, a city she flew into about 2 weeks earlier? They were trying to figure out the sense in moving to a city only to move into another city in a matter of weeks. There was that, and apparently there was also the fact that Lorrain was not the kind of person who would leave without saying goodbye. All of these made Lorrain's friends and family pretty concerned. So after a few days of searching, they decided to go to the police to file a missing persons report. After Lorrain was reported missing, the police, with the support of family and friends, began to search for her. The search and investigation. After asking questions about the last time they had seen her, the last place she had been, and all that, the police were able to get a head start with the search of Lorrain. They found out where she was last seen and were able to get CCTV footage. From the CCTV footage, they saw that Lorrain had indeed been walking home in the early hours of September 1st, but there was nothing odd about that. That is, until they noticed a certain man had been following her. They watched as he kept following her until he approached her, and then they saw the two walking towards his apartment with his right hand on her shoulder. The police were able to identify the man as 24-year-old Azam Mangori. The arrest. Azam Mangori was arrested on September 8, 2020, a day after the incident. He was brought into custody and police began to question him. He told the police that his name was Christopher Meyer and claimed that he was homeless. He, however, wasn't able to keep up with this lie. When the police asked him why he lied about his name, he said that he had been brought up in a Kurdish region of Iraq and that his parents were quite strict. He, however, left Iraq because he wanted to live in some place where he wouldn't be faulted for his identity. He claimed to be gay. He said that he would have been stoned to death where he came from if they found out he was gay. Although there was some truth to this statement, Mangori was still holding things back from the police. The police eventually found out that Mangori was not completely gay and was rather bisexual. They found evidence that he had been involved with men as much as with women. This evidence was a recording of a sexual conversation he had with Lorrain before she disappeared. The police didn't understand why he had a record of that, but they were able to get something out of it at least. During Mangori's questioning, he kept saying he was homeless, so the police didn't have a home address to go to search further. But the police knew he wasn't telling the truth. The day after Mangori was arrested, the police found the dismembered arms and legs of the 32-year-old Lorrain in the alleyway behind his apartment. They also found her head and her torso in a forest area 4 days later. Due to how decomposed the body was, it was difficult for the coroner to arrive at a concluded cause of death. However, they found a t-shirt shoved into Lorrain's mouth, down to her throat, so they suggested that she must have died of asphyxiation. The truth about how Lorrain died. There were two different theories that surfaced concerning how Lorrain died. There was Mangori's theory, and then there was the police's theory, which was born out of Mangori's explanation. The police theorized that Mangori had intentionally killed Lorrain. They said that he lured her into his apartment with the intention of killing her. The police backed this up using a video of Mangori, which they found online the day she died. In the video, Mangori had been vaping, not minding the body of Lorrain, which lay on his bed. He was also listening to Chop Suey by System of a Down. A particular line from the song says, "I cry when angels deserve to die." Another thing that backed up the police's theory was Mangori's Google search history. On the same day Lorrain was murdered, Mangori took to Google to search for how to dig a grave by hand. They also found out that Mangori had hacked into Lorrain's Facebook account and had impersonated her, telling her friends and family that she had moved to Plymouth. He also sent a "f*** you" emoji to Lorrain's fiancé after seeing that the latter had been persistent in calling and texting Lorrain's number. The police also found out that Mangori did not dismember Lorrain's body until about a week after he killed her. They said that Mangori's reason for dismembering could be because he had a sexual interest in something like that. They arrived at this speculation after going through Mangori's phone and noticing that he had several videos of men fighting, even though they all had prosthetic legs. They said that since he enjoyed watching such videos, they could have been a dismemberment trigger. On the other hand, Mangori theorized that Lorrain died of alcohol poisoning. He said that she had overdosed and that it had been an accident. According to him, he only acted how he did later because he was scared. He panicked and he didn't know what to do. He said that he met Lorrain on the street and the two began to have a conversation. One thing led to another, and the two had a sexual encounter in the alleyway close to his apartment. He said he recorded that encounter just in case something went wrong. He also claimed that they went to his apartment after that, drank some alcohol, had sex twice, and smoked something he didn't know until that day. He said that Lorrain had brought the substance with her and that after he took it, he felt weird and wanted to throw up. He also said that his head and eyes were spinning, so he didn't know when he fell asleep. However, according to a toxicology report, there was no drug in Lorrain's system before she died. Mangory said he woke up the next morning to find an unconscious Lorrain in the bathroom, with a patch of urine close to where she lay. He then decided to carry out CPR on her, but eventually stopped because it didn't seem like he knew what he was doing. When the police asked him why he hadn't called for help, he said he was utterly consumed with trying to carry out CPR properly and that he didn't know how to call for an ambulance. He explained that he was considering making a run for it, but didn't because he noticed that weird creatures were coming out of her mouth. As part of his plan to stop them, he shoved a t-shirt down her throat. When asked about the released vaping video, Mangory said that was just what he did to cheer himself since he was depressed. He also admitted to hacking Lorrain's Facebook account, saying it wasn't rocket science and that he only wanted to use her phone. Meanwhile, the police found more incriminating evidence against Mangory. First, he was caught buying supplies that he used to dispose of Lorrain's body parts, and two, he was caught in the act of disposing of her body parts. There was also footage of him with a large duffel bag with which he packed Lorrain's body parts. When asked about these things, Mangory admitted to doing all of them. Mangory pled guilty to preventing the lawful burial of Lorrain Cox, and after a 5-week trial, he was sentenced to a minimum of 20 years in prison on the count of murder. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment your take down below, and subscribe to the channel. Also, hit that notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case.